In today's episode, we focus on Keokuk, Iowa, where a tragic and disturbing event unfolded. A mother consumed by jealousy fatally attacked her teenage daughter after learning that the girl had been involved with her stepfather. The victim, Quinn Donalds, was a 19-year-old high school senior at Keokuk High School in Iowa. Quinn worked part-time at the local Hy-Vee grocery store. Though she was often seen as a quiet and thoughtful young woman, her life was anything but easy. She struggled with a difficult home environment, mainly due to the troubled relationship she had with her mother, Randy Donalds. Quinn and her mother, Randy, had always had a strained relationship, but it had gotten worse over time. Randy, dealing with alcoholism and emotional challenges, frequently argued with her daughter. At the core of their conflicts was a sense of jealousy. Randy viewed Quinn's youth and beauty as a threat. As a slim, attractive teenager, Quinn began receiving attention from boys at school, which her mother couldn't handle. Randy, whose appearance had been affected by years of alcoholism and substance abuse, struggled with insecurities about her own looks. She felt that her daughter's blossoming independence and beauty were somehow overshadowing her. The tension between them reached a breaking point when Quinn began secretly having an affair with Randy's husband. Bruce Donalds, a construction worker, had been married to Randy for 5 years. He was a tough, gritty man with a reputation that wasn't exactly spotless. Bruce had a history of domestic conflicts, including an arrest after a violent argument with Randy at the Hy-Vee store where Quinn worked. As time passed, however, his relationship with Quinn became increasingly inappropriate. They began an affair that Randy was unaware of at first, but Quinn's guilt and anxiety over keeping the secret only added to the growing tension in their home. Quinn dreamed of escaping the turmoil at home. She had planned to move out after graduation, hoping to attend a local community college and eventually transfer to the University of Kansas in Lawrence, where her grandparents lived. She often shared her plans with friends, spending hours on Instagram, watching Netflix, and imagining a future where she could leave her troubled home behind. In the days leading up to her death, hope seemed to slip away. Quinn was trapped between her mother's intense jealousy and the secret affair with Bruce. The tension in their home was overwhelming. While she continued to dream of leaving and building a new life, it's possible she felt the weight of time running out. On the morning of January 28, 2014, Quinn Donalds' body was found. The storm that had hit Keokuk the night before had blanketed the streets in snow, with temperatures well below freezing. Around 8 a.m., a maintenance worker from Keokuk High School, Carlos Kokoy Tangaina, was carrying out his routine checks when he spotted something strange in the parking lot. At first, he thought it was just a snowbank pushed up by a plow, but as he got closer, the shocking reality became clear. Quinn's lifeless body was lying in the snow, partially covered and unclothed. Stunned, Tangaina quickly dialed 911 to report his grim discovery. The cold, windswept parking lot set a haunting scene for the discovery. Quinn's body showed obvious signs of violence. Her skin was bruised and there were scratches across her face and arms. Tangaina was visibly shaken as he spoke to the dispatcher, saying it appeared she had been left outside for hours. The blizzard had nearly buried her, and it was clear to him that she hadn't survived the harsh conditions of the night. After making the call, he waited for the police to arrive. Although he remained calm, witnesses noted that Tangaina appeared pale and nervous as he stood by the school entrance, away from the body. The freezing temperatures had preserved Quinn's body to some degree, but her cause of death wasn't immediately apparent. Given the weather and the signs of injury, it was clear that something far more sinister than hypothermia had occurred. When the police arrived shortly after, they quickly secured the area and began their investigation. The officers observed clear signs of physical assault on Quinn's body, including multiple bruises and injuries. The harsh cold and heavy snowfall also played a crucial role, leading investigators to believe that Quinn had been deliberately left outside. Although the official cause of death was later determined to be hypothermia, the circumstances surrounding Quinn's death immediately raised suspicions of foul play. Investigators began to reconstruct the events leading up to the horrific discovery, trying to uncover what had happened in the hours before her death. The brutal nature of the crime shocked the community, leaving friends and family devastated and struggling to make sense of the tragedy. The Keokuk police were on the scene within minutes of the 911 call on January 28, 2014. Detective Olga Slaughter, a seasoned investigator with 5 years of experience, took charge of the case. The snow-covered parking lot provided a chilling backdrop to the discovery. Quinn Donalds' body was quickly identified through personal items found nearby, including her phone, which had fallen out of her bag. Her frozen body bore visible signs of trauma, bruises on her face and arms, and clear evidence that she had been beaten before being left outside. Detective Slaughter and her team quickly suspected foul play. While the blizzard likely contributed to her death, the bruises indicated that Quinn had been attacked before being abandoned in the cold. The medical examiner later confirmed that hypothermia was the official cause of death, but it was clear that Quinn had been unconscious when she was left in the snow, unable to defend herself. Quinn's injuries, especially the blunt force trauma to her head, suggested she had been violently beaten, likely rendering her unconscious before being left outside. Police believed she had been killed elsewhere and then dumped in the high school parking lot. The absence of any signs of a struggle in the snow around her body led investigators to conclude she had been moved after the assault. The killer likely used the blizzard to cover their tracks, hoping the snow would conceal the evidence. However, detectives were able to reconstruct the events based on the absence of blood at the scene and the pattern of bruises on Quinn's body. They used thermal imaging to search the area for footprints and other clues, but the heavy snowfall had wiped out most of the evidence. The investigators gathered all available evidence, including faint tire tracks found near the location where her body was discovered. With the crime scene secured, the police shifted their focus to identifying potential suspects, aware that the culprit had likely used one of the worst snowstorms of the year to cover up the crime. The first person they focused on was 25-year-old Bruce Donalds. Bruce was known for his short temper and violent past. For 5 years, he had been in a tumultuous relationship with Quinn's mother, Randy, a construction worker with a tough reputation in Keokuk. Bruce had been involved in multiple domestic disputes over the years, and his relationship with Randy had been far from peaceful. Police records revealed several instances of physical altercations between Bruce and Randy, often triggered by alcohol and Bruce's controlling behavior. One of the most infamous incidents took place just months before Quinn's death, at the grocery store where she worked. In late 2016, Bruce lost his temper and caused a scene in the store where Quinn was a part-time cashier. Witnesses reported seeing Bruce drag Randy by the arm down one of the store aisles, later using his belt to strike her in front of shocked customers. What started as a minor argument over groceries quickly spiraled into a violent outburst, revealing Bruce's aggressive behavior. Despite the scene, Randy chose not to press charges, explaining that she depended on him both financially and emotionally. This incident caught the attention of detectives as they looked further into Bruce's past, revealing a pattern of controlling behavior through intimidation and violence. When Bruce was brought in for questioning about Quinn's murder, his response was eerily detached and cold. He seemed unfazed by her death, and it didn't take long for detectives to uncover an even more troubling secret. Bruce reluctantly confessed that his relationship with Quinn had become sexual in the months leading up to her death, though he was vague about how it had begun or the specifics of their dynamic. This unsettling revelation added a new, disturbing dimension to the case, giving police a potential motive for the crime. Bruce had developed an intimate relationship with his girlfriend's daughter, creating a tense and volatile atmosphere in the household. Quinn's friends later came forward, sharing that she had confided in them about her mother's growing jealousy. This new information added a troubling layer to the investigation, raising the stakes even higher. Despite showing no signs of guilt during his interrogation, Bruce's violent past and troubling relationship with Quinn made him a key suspect. However, his calm, emotionless demeanor during questioning prevented investigators from rushing to conclusions. Meanwhile, Randy Donalds, 37, had long battled alcoholism and emotional instability, adding further complexity to the case. Randy's dependence on alcohol, coupled with her inability to maintain steady employment, had made her increasingly vulnerable and reliant on Bruce for both financial support and a steady supply of alcohol. Over time, her emotional well-being had worsened, with neighbors describing her as erratic, alternating between calm periods and sudden outbursts. Though she occasionally took on odd jobs, Randy was mostly unemployed, and Bruce's income as a construction worker was her primary source of support. This dependence created a toxic dynamic in Randy and Bruce's relationship, leaving Randy feeling trapped and powerless. Her struggles with self-worth were further deepened by the jealousy she felt toward Quinn. At 19, Quinn embodied everything Randy believed she had lost: youth, beauty, and a future full of possibilities. As Quinn matured and grew more confident, Randy's insecurities grew stronger. Friends and family noticed that Randy frequently made passive-aggressive comments about Quinn's appearance, hinting at her growing resentment and the feeling of being overshadowed by her own daughter. The jealousy escalated even further when Randy learned that Quinn had become involved with Bruce. The revelation that her daughter, the one she had raised, was now involved with her husband pushed Randy's emotional instability to the brink. The fact that Quinn, whom Randy had always envied, was now sexually involved with Bruce was something she couldn't come to terms with. When police brought Randy in for questioning after Quinn's death, she appeared disheveled and visibly agitated, a stark contrast to the calm and cooperative demeanor she had shown when officers first arrived at the crime scene. Her account of events seemed inconsistent, and she frequently veered off topic, focusing instead on her own issues with Bruce, blaming him for her unhappiness and their constant arguments. Investigators observed that Randy was deeply emotional, but they couldn't tell if her reactions were the result of genuine grief or if they masked a darker, more volatile inner turmoil. During the interrogation, Randy acknowledged that she had noticed the increasing closeness between Bruce and Quinn, but she downplayed the seriousness of their relationship, minimizing its impact. Despite Randy's insistence that she had no involvement in Quinn's death, detectives couldn't overlook the growing tension in the household. Her feelings of inadequacy, dependency on Bruce, and deep resentment toward Quinn painted a portrait of a woman teetering on the edge. As the investigation unfolded, detectives began to suspect that Randy's jealousy and emotional turmoil may have been a far more significant factor than she was willing to admit. Gene Wendler, 19, was Quinn Donalds' ex-boyfriend and known for both his athletic talent and quick temper. The two had been in a relationship for over a year, but towards the end, Gene's jealousy and possessiveness became more pronounced. By January 2014, their relationship had grown increasingly strained, and Quinn decided to end it. Friends of Quinn reported that Gene took the breakup particularly hard, having difficulty accepting that she wanted to move on. In the days before her death, witnesses saw them arguing in public on several occasions. One of the more notable confrontations occurred at a local mall, where they unexpectedly ran into each other near a Starbucks. Tensions escalated when Quinn mentioned her plans to leave Keokuk and start anew. Jean, who had always struggled with the idea of losing control over those close to him, was visibly shaken by Quinn's decision to move on without him. His competitive nature, which had earned him a reputation on the football field, seemed to spill over into his personal life, where he viewed relationships as something to win rather than nurture. When police brought Jean in for questioning, he seemed calm but detached, a sharp contrast to the more emotional reactions of the other suspects. He claimed that although he and Quinn had broken up, they had remained on good terms. However, investigators quickly noticed inconsistencies in his story, raising doubts about the truth of his account. Jean became evasive when questioned about the details of their arguments, and he visibly tensed when asked about Quinn's plans to leave town. Detectives began to suspect that his motive might stem from a deep sense of jealousy and rejection. Having struggled to control Quinn during their relationship, her decision to move on without him likely pushed him to a breaking point. Although Jean maintained his innocence throughout the interrogation, his body language and demeanor suggested he was withholding key details. His frustration with Quinn's independence and future plans made him a person of interest, leading investigators to believe he might have acted out in a fit of rage. Despite his attempts to distance himself from the situation, his close connection to Quinn, coupled with his history of emotional volatility, kept him firmly under suspicion. The investigators knew they had to keep pressing forward to figure out if Jean was involved in Quinn's tragic death. The case took an unexpected turn in late January 2014 when police discovered new evidence that revealed more about Quinn's intentions before her death. It was a frigid morning, with a late-season blizzard still covering the streets of Keokuk, Iowa, in a thick layer of snow. As police reviewed Quinn's digital footprint, her social media, text messages, and emails, they stumbled upon a series of exchanges between her and Jean Wendler. The texts revealed something surprising. Quinn had been secretly planning to leave Keokuk and hitchhike to Kansas, where her grandparents had retired. In these messages, Quinn opened up to Jean about her growing desire to escape the chaos of her home life. She had become increasingly fearful for her safety and began to doubt whether she could continue living under her mother's roof. Feeling trapped by the toxic atmosphere, she spoke of her mother's jealousy, Bruce's advances, and the constant drama that made her feel suffocated. The messages revealed a young woman desperate for a fresh start, seeking to escape the turmoil that had overwhelmed her life. With this new information, the police shifted their focus, realizing that Quinn's plans to leave had likely heightened the tension at home. It became suspected that Randy Donalds, Quinn's mother, may have found out about her daughter's plan and reacted with anger and violence. Given Randy's already intense jealousy over Quinn's relationship with Bruce, the discovery that Quinn planned to leave may have been the final straw, pushing Randy to a breaking point. Investigators turned their attention to Randy's recent behavior and her movements on the night of Quinn's death. Meanwhile, the revelation of the texts also brought new scrutiny to Jean Wendler, raising more questions about his involvement. Had Jean known about the danger Quinn was in? Was he somehow involved in her plan to leave, or even her death? Although Jean's emotional volatility and past arguments with Quinn had made him a suspect, the new evidence suggested his involvement might be more complex than the police had originally believed. This breakthrough provided a clearer motive for the crime, helping investigators start to piece together the events leading up to Quinn's murder. It was now a race against time to determine which of the people closest to her could have been capable of such a brutal act. As police sifted through the new evidence from Quinn's digital messages and witness interviews, their focus narrowed in on Randy Donalds. The final breakthrough came when investigators learned that Randy had not only discovered Quinn's plan to leave, but also uncovered her daughter's ongoing sexual relationship with Bruce, her husband, and Quinn's stepfather. The shock of these two devastating revelations seemed to ignite a violent and deadly outburst from Randy. Feeling abandoned and humiliated, Randy was consumed by jealousy. Already emotionally fragile and battling alcohol dependence, she saw Quinn as a threat on multiple levels. Randy believed that Quinn had taken Bruce from her, as their relationship had moved beyond flirtation into something far more intimate and serious. The sense of betrayal, combined with Quinn's plans to leave their home, pushed Randy into a violent frenzy. Late on the night of January 26, 2014, following a confrontation that spiraled out of control, Randy attacked Quinn in their small Keokuk home. Fueled by rage and alcohol, she savagely beat her daughter with whatever she could get her hands on: her fists, household objects, and anything else within reach. The attack was brutal, leaving Quinn unconscious and defenseless against her mother's uncontrolled rage. As the reality of what she had done set in, Randy was gripped by panic. Outside, the blizzard raged on, with heavy snow and biting winds sweeping through the streets of Keokuk. In a frantic bid to cover up her crime, Randy dragged Quinn's lifeless body into the harsh cold. She hoped the snowstorm would mask the evidence of the brutal beating. With no regard for her daughter's well-being, Randy left Quinn's unconscious, battered body in a parking lot near a local school, trusting that the storm would erase any signs of her involvement. As investigators pieced together the timeline and motive, it became clear that Randy was their prime suspect. She was arrested at the home she had once shared with Quinn, her expression unreadable. Throughout the arrest, Randy displayed little emotion, her detached demeanor indicating that she had likely accepted the consequences of her actions long before they caught up with her. When confronted with the evidence, Randy's reaction was minimal, neither surprised nor remorseful. The revelation left Quinn's friends and family in shock, struggling to grasp the horrifying truth that it was her own mother who had taken her life. By January 2019, the trial of Randy Donalds for the murder of her daughter had become the center of attention in Keokuk, capturing the community's full focus as the case unfolded. The prosecution, led by Assistant District Attorney Henry Wunder, a 38-year-old known for her direct and determined approach, argued that Randy had killed her daughter driven by a toxic mix of jealousy, rage, and desperation. Wunder presented evidence of Randy's violent outburst after discovering Quinn's relationship with Bruce Donalds and her plans to leave home. The prosecution portrayed Randy as a woman consumed by feelings of abandonment and betrayal, ultimately lashing out in a brutal and unhinged act of violence. Wunder highlighted the savage nature of the attack, the extent to which Randy went to stage the crime scene, and how she callously left her daughter to die in the freezing cold, hoping the blizzard would conceal the true cause of death. In response, the defense, led by attorney Nathan Scott, a 45-year-old known for handling tough cases, argued that Randy had not intended to kill her daughter. Scott contended that Randy had been overwhelmed by years of emotional and financial strain, further exacerbated by her alcohol dependency and a toxic, controlling relationship with Bruce. Scott's defense strategy aimed to paint Randy as a victim of her circumstances, a woman driven to the edge by years of neglect and abuse, both from Bruce and from the hardships of her life. He argued that Quinn's death was a tragic accident, not a premeditated act of murder. The trial was emotionally intense, with Quinn's friends and family filling the courtroom, each struggling to process the painful reality of the case. Quinn's classmates from high school, former co-workers from Hy-Vee, and even neighbors filled the courtroom to witness the trial. Quinn's remaining family members were visibly devastated, shaken by the graphic details of her final moments as they were revealed during the proceedings. After several days of deliberation, the jury ultimately found Randy guilty of second-degree murder. Randy was sentenced to 25 years to life in prison, a verdict that left many divided. Some felt the punishment was too lenient given the brutality of the crime, while others believed it was just, considering Randy's mental state at the time. For Quinn's family and friends, however, no sentence could undo the loss. They were left to grapple with the devastating reality of her death, a pain that would linger with them for years to come. After the trial concluded in January 2019, Randy Donald was sent to the Iowa Correctional Facility for Women in Shakopee to serve her sentence of 25 years to life for the murder of her daughter Quinn. The facility, known for housing female inmates, offered various rehabilitation programs. However, Randy struggled to adjust to her new reality, grappling with intense feelings of guilt and shame over the crime she had committed.